Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted, episode 40. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert.
And I'm Gavin Ashenden.
So the news just this week that Michael Voris has left Church Militant, which he established some 15 or 20 years ago, quite some time ago. And that's everybody's discussing that at the moment. So we're going to share our thoughts on that, as well as some more on Bishop Strickland. And Bishop Robert Barron has issued his thoughts post-Synod, which is really, really very good and worth reading. So I will put the link to Bishop Robert Barron's reflections here on this video for you to see if you haven't already. So we'll discuss that too. But let's start, perhaps, shall we, with Michael Voris, who has left Church Militant. And Mark, I know that I think you've spoken before in previous episodes that you know him somewhat and have a lot of friends over in the US, and of course I've spoken to him when we had a little chat last year on my channel where I was having conversations with various people, and I found him to be, a really personable chap. We had a lovely chat and we prayed together before we spoke, and I know that he is somebody about whom people have strong opinions, but it certainly seems like at the moment he's in a very difficult place, and Church Militant is in this difficult place. So what can you tell us about what you know, Mark?
I don't know.
Not much.
Yeah. I suppose the thing, I'd encourage everyone to pray for Michael. That's the main thing. And to pray for the apostolate of Church Militant, which was always so important in fighting. The way that it gained prominence, really, Church Militant, was that it was such a stalwart defense of the faithful in terms of exposing the corruption among the bishops. And they, Voris was absolutely key in that. He wouldn't let it go. He was after the bishops and anything that they did wrong. And in all those things, he was proven right in all of his assertions and everything he said in that regard. And I think it's important to remember that the apostolate started as a result of his own personal conversion. And the idea was to bring the truth of the faith to the people. And I think this is something we all have a great deal of empathy with, because, certainly as a blogger of a number of years, I've spoken to bishops and said, who's sort of not happy with us exposing the dark underbelly of what goes on sometimes in our dioceses. And, I've been quite forthright in saying, well, if you weren't doing naughty things, then, we'd all just go away, all the blogs and everything. And that's really how Church Militant came about and was extremely effective in its ministry. So the point really there is that it's a great loss, whatever the personalities. It's a great loss for all of us who are fighting church corruption, because I was speaking to Michael Hitchborn earlier today, who's a really dear friend and a great Catholic, and he used a sort of naval analogy and was saying that if Lepanto's like one of the small boats in the Navy, like the destroyers, then Church Militant was the battle cruiser. It was one of the big boats that was able, because of Michael's experience in the media industry and his expertise, it was able to do things very professionally and was very good at investigation and that sort of thing. Yeah. I think that, it's like the sad side of it has been that I think most people who have been following it know that Michael has taken more to attacking fellow Catholics for all different reasons. And I think those of us, who are sort of friendly with him, we've been trying to say, guns forward, gentlemen, like we're all in the same team. And it's one of those things where sometimes you get people who think that their way is the only way forward, and they're the ones who know exactly how to attack a certain problem. And certainly Michael was very effective at that. So it's very sad to hear that there's, like whatever's going on there. And I feel desperately sorry for all the people at Church Militant who are really good and devout people. And I hope that I hope everyone who supports them continues to support them, really. That's sort of the main thing.
Yeah. There's been some lovely reflections as well, or after the news came out, including from John Henry Weston, Live Site News. And Christine Nialls was very interesting to listen to, because she drew attention to the fact that actually she talked generally about apostolates such as Church Militant, which is very large, or indeed our own, which is much smaller, but still, speaking into the culture. And when you do, it's a really important reminder of the fact that you are going to be attacked, that you have to root yourself in prayer, you have to cloak yourself in prayer. And if that slips, then I think those temptations are even greater, and the enemy may get more of a foothold. And she spoke in her short video about how she had thought Michael Voris had fallen away from the prayer that used to kind of cloak Church Militant. They used to pray the rosary every day. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm just saying that's what Christine Nialls was saying, and she felt that when that slipped, then other things started to become more difficult. Gavin, I know you've watched that and had some thoughts on as well on what Christine Nialls was saying.
I had a number of thoughts about Michael Voris. I remember when I first came across him and had two thoughts. The first was I was extremely grateful that he was calling out people for bad behavior, particularly McCarrick. I mean, I think McCarrick has been one of the worst scourges the Catholic Church has had to put up with for a long time. And so I was very grateful that he was clearly telling the truth. I was immediately worried about the level of venom that he put into it, because it wasn't just that he was angry, but there was something much more personal and darker in there. And I thought, this is not a prophetic platform you can continue very long. You're either going to have to lose the venom, or else you're going to get caught by it. And by saying venom, I don't mean to be critical of Michael at all. Just that we've all got the stuff under the surface for all of us, but we need to be accountable, and ideally have a spiritual director somewhere accountable to, even a soul friend actually, who can say to us, look, there's something that needs unknotting here. And if I'd known Michael well, I'd have put my arm around him and said, Michael, there's something that needs unknotting, and it will destroy you if you don't deal with it. And listening to him talk about it, he talks about not having been able to face whatever it was. Part of the difficulty, we don't know what it was, but I think if Christine Nialls is right, and she probably is, he's been absenting himself for 18 months from prayer, from the prayers that he introduced into the as part of the routine for his own organization. And just one in brackets, I want to say, having also been involved with prophetic CEOs who've gone wrong and brought their whole organizations crashing down with them, it's a great tribute to Michael that Church Militant is working in a way that it can fire him, because very few prophetic CEOs manage to achieve that, and he must be given credit for that. So there's this thing that he hasn't managed at all well. And I think Christine Nialls is right. The moment you stop praying regularly, you open yourself up. And I'm particularly aware of this because one of the reasons I do the daily office on Facebook is because a few years ago, God spoke to me. I'm using shorthand. He hardly ever speaks to me like this, but he really said, I want you to do two things. Say your prayers on the internet and offer homilies. And I find them incredibly difficult. Interestingly enough, saying prayers is just as difficult as offering homilies. I experience this really powerful headwind, not just, I don't want to do it today, but I've got 15 things to do instead. I'm sure that everyone listening knows exactly what this is all about, because we're all attacked in this way. But probably what not many people may not understand, that this is simply the tactic the enemy used. I've been lecturing on C.S. Lewis, and I'm so refreshed by the very clear way Lewis using screw tape as a narrative. Lewis clearly fought the devil tooth and nail. Only a man who'd had profound encounters with evil could write with his insight, his courage, and his clarity. Goodness knows what the mess was inside Lewis, but he made it through. Voris hasn't made it through, but we just commend him to God. What we've got to do is to watch ourselves, make sure that we can make it through. And I think Christine's right. We have to just make sure we have to say our prayers. And one of the things maybe we can do, the three of us, is to talk about ways in which we manage to fight that battle, fight and lose, and fight and win. We all fight and lose and fight and win. So if we're going to speak prophetically, we must be very careful how we do it, or it'll come back and bite us. No venom. The truth is powerful enough. And if we're going to do anything in public, then we really have to keep up the daily and obviously more than daily prayers. And I think any hints that we can offer each other on how that can be done to avoid losing more than we do would be really very welcome.
Yeah, and of course it's not over yet. This is another stage for Michael, but he's not dead yet. So definitely we just continue to pray for him. And actually, I was laughing there because you two know, because I've been whinging on at you this week about the problems I've had with technology, and I've been really sent running in circles trying to do things and improve things and work on this podcast and get some equipment up and running. And
I don't know what's she on about.
Oh, really? Oh, you don't know? You didn't notice my messages?
No, what was that? Totally went over my head.
I was to say I got a little
You were
annoyed.
colourful. You were very colourful.
And I went to morning mass on Monday. I don't know what day we are, and then not on Tuesday. I was very grumpy on Tuesday, and I decided, well, I'm just too busy. I'm too busy trying to sort out this and that and pick this up and go there, and somebody's let me down here, and I haven't got time to go to mass. And this morning I was still just as busy and all the same problems I had on Tuesday. And I said to myself, no, actually, because I revisited Screw Tape as well, and I said, no, that is your priority. Get the kids to school and get to morning mass, and don't sit there grumpy thinking I should be doing other things. Go and be present. And I did, and my day is no better really. The same problems, but I think you'll find maybe been a little less grumpy and a little bit more leaving it and sitting with it and trying to cope. And it sounds silly really, but it's Screw Tape. That's why it's so brilliant. You say C.S. Lewis is so brilliant. It's the little whisper of go and make a cup of tea and don't keep reading that. And shall we make him a pacifist or a patriot? It doesn't matter really, as long as he takes some extreme position. We don't care. It's those little whispers. And we've all spoken about Michael Voris, with this idea that he's like a St. John the Baptist sort of figure. He is tough, he is courageous, he is faithful, and he has gifts and talents that others don't have. But there's always a shadow that can be where the enemy can go and niggle. And unfortunately it seems we're just incredibly vulnerable to that, more so perhaps in the work that he's doing. Well, more so definitely.
Exposure has got something to do with it, hasn't it? And
yeah,
I was just looking around for my rosary because that's hang on to your prayers. And even when, as you were saying, when you don't want to do it, even if you really
feel the odd one out now,
can't end the day in prayer, it's really important, just whatever prayer you can make is better than no prayer. So
yeah, exactly. It's like Peter Crow says that the worst rosary is the one you didn't say. So absolutely, isn't it? It's a bit like the reasons people say for not having children. They say, well, hang on, I haven't got a big enough house yet, and I haven't got, and you'll just put it off and put it off. So it's just to do it even when you don't feel like doing it, because it isn't about feelings, is it? It's habit forming as well, and action. So we do continue to pray for Michael and Church Militant, and as Christine and John Henry and we've all been saying, to keep supporting them and their work. And it's really has been always a brilliant ministry.
I'd like to add one small. Perhaps we could all offer little hints about how we claw our way back. I just want to bounce off the thing that Katherine just said, because it's really, I thought, very important. So you were talking about it doesn't matter how we feel, and I think that it's exactly this business of how we feel that gets in the way, because it's how we feel that stops us doing it. And I want to try and use my words very carefully here, but see if I can explain this. I've begun more recently over the last few years to think of prayer more like magic. Now, by magic, I mean, what I think is that the magicians have taken the life of the spirit and they've perverted it. But essentially, the basic model, the prototype, is the life in the spirit. And when they do bad spells, they have a powerful perverting effect. But prayer is a good spell. So let's just, in Anglo-Saxon, the word spell is anonymous. But when we pray, it isn't about how we feel. It's that we're blessing the world with our words as an act, just to do it. Doesn't matter how you feel. Doesn't even matter if you believe it. But the fact that we say the prayers, that we enunciate them out loud, that we stop and make time and space resonate with the Logos and our love of the Logos and words of love, even if we don't feel them. That's what praise is. And so it doesn't matter whether it's the Gloria, the whole Gloria, or the Trinitarian Gloria, or just one single Hail Mary, or whether it's the whole but anything at all, just like grabbing a tree as you fall off a cliff. Just one tree in one fist will do the job, and then from there we make our way back. From there we do a second one, and maybe a third one later on. But it's I don't think it's just me, but the way the devil works is to say, you haven't done what you should have done. If you can't do the whole thing, you're not going to do any of it at all. Give it up. Don't do any. And then it's the perfectionism.
Again. Yeah, it's
always
the
extremes
and the extremes.
Right.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, go on. No, please finish.
Well, just my answer is, well, I'll just say Father if I have to, and then once I've got Father out, I'll say, hallowed be your name, and maybe there's then time for your kingdom come. But the moment you start the ball rolling, you find that the thing that came against you begins to give way. But it's absolutely essential not to be knocked back and to then find ourselves doing nothing. So doing any, it's like, shall I go to Mass or not go to Mass? Well, okay, if you don't go to Mass, there are still ways you can claw the situation back, like doing an Our Father, like doing a rosary, like doing anything. Help will work. But it in my experience, they because of the perfectionism, they try and silence us completely. But to make the world resonate with a prayer of any kind, especially the name Jesus, I'm astonished at how the devil gets people to blaspheme the name Jesus. I mean, they want to use that word more than any other word. They never say Buddha or Muhammad. They only ever say Jesus as a swear word. But I think, again, Jesus in the mouth, said lovingly, has the most intense power to put things right. At least, a lot like a Wi-Fi thing. My Wi-Fi stretches 20 feet. The word Jesus blesses at least 20 feet in front of me. I think these small things are one of the ways in which we reclaim we reclaim the kingdom of heaven and allow him to turn the tide a little bit. And anything small is better, is good, and much better than nothing.
Yeah, it's funny because as just before you said about the name of Jesus, I remember my mum growing up used to say, if you can't think of anything to say, or you're really stuck in the mud, just say the name of Jesus. And I would, and I just remember that's been such a habit that my mind goes to that, and I go to that. My will, I suppose, goes to saying the name Jesus. And I was speaking with somebody today who said, in our culture, there's such a lot of the problems are down to this big push and encouragement and belief that the most important thing is independence, independence and autonomy. And I won't be told what to do, and I don't depend on anyone, and you won't control me, and anti-authoritarian. And it's like, well, that isn't reality. And it's this sort of unreality that leads to such crazy things as the transgender movement. There's no connection, not just between body and soul, but between one another. And so that's why this idea of the body of Christ, of our interdependence, is really far more real. And in fact, what we need to do is this, you might call it a radical, recognize that we have this radical dependence on God. And actually, if we have this radical dependence on God, then we then become independent. We become not dependent on these other things that will enslave us. So prayer, I think, whilst, yes, I don't want to do it, or it's not about feeling, and it's about just saying the words, and it's about blessing ourselves and our families, it's also about a constant reminder that we place ourselves before him and say, we're nothing without you. It's that humility as well. It's just saying, I'm totally dependent on you. And as I place myself before you in prayer, I am not therefore dependent on these other things that are pulling me away from you. and therefore there's a freedom in that. So I think that's nice.
Well, and the Hebrew, obviously, like I know, but that Jesus, Yeshua in Hebrew means God saves. So
Yeah.
if all you're doing is saying Yeshua, all you're doing is saying Jesus, you're saying God saves. So it's that acknowledgement, isn't it? And I just was thinking when you were saying that, Proverbs 1:7 came to mind. Well, and it's throughout Scripture. Tabin Adonai, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so understanding that we are dependent, and that's what that fear is, not being right, our reality, that our existence is dependent on God's will, focused on our being. That's what makes us existent. It's beautiful. Well, and it is the beginning of wisdom once you start to figure out those sort of simple, truths.
Yeah, which brings us, I think, quite neatly to Bishop Barron's letter about the Synod, because in his letter he speaks about his experience at the Synod and is in part positive about the idea of, of course we have to listen to people who say that they are not being listened to, and he went through a list that includes LGBTQ plus. I don't say that because I don't think we can call people that, but people.
Well, he doesn't either, interestingly, does he?
Yeah.
He just says LGBT.
Yeah, so just LGBT under this banner. People of color, he says, the disabled, I think he says, and he talks about different groups that have said that they feel unlistened to. And one thing he said, their demand to be heard was heard loud and clear. So he said that's one thing we can say the Synod did. But he went on, and it's very, as I said at the beginning, it's well worth reading. And a couple of things he talked about feeling as well, in terms of how we understand love wrongly. So many people understand love wrongly. So when they say that they don't feel loved, and are reducing that to a feeling, he says there might be a tension between welcoming and truth, but not between love and truth. So he's pointing to the fact that some of the people who say that they are excluded by the church feel excluded by the church. So maybe there's a tension there between welcoming and truth. But in fact, love being to will the good of the other, there is no tension between love and truth. So he speaks to that and says we mustn't forget that. But it was a very, very good letter, I thought. Gavin, what did you think?
I think it's one of the best things I've seen for a very long time, and I mean, Mark will add the bits he liked too. So I won't try to pinch them from you, Mark. But one marvelous bit was where he said, first of all, we've got a problem with natural and supernatural. The supernatural has to take precedence and priority, where we're really about the transformation of society. Well, when did you last hear a bishop say that? That was, I mean, we've been banging on about it quite a long time, but it was wonderful to hear him say that. Then he said, I'll just stop
you there, because he was talking about mission, and I've got a little quote that he speaks of there. He says, conspicuous by their absence in the text on mission were references to sin, grace, redemption, cross, resurrection, eternal life, and salvation. Yet the primary mission of the church is to declare the resurrection. And
he said something I hadn't understood before. I really hadn't understood this. He said that the people who joined for the Synod, when they were talking about mission, they meant something other than those things you've just mentioned, Katherine. They meant social justice. They really did. I've been fooled. Every time I've read a document by these people and they've read mission, I've gone, hooray, and clapped my hands and rubbed them together. Go for it. But they meant something. They meant politics every time. And once again, we've got this real problem of using one word and meaning something completely different. He said he took the German bishops to task and said the nonsensical idea that science can tell us things that the Bible can't tell us. He said science will give us an idea about the etiology of homosexuality. I had to look etiology up. I thought I knew what it was, but essentially it's the cause of things. But he said it won't tell us whether it's right or wrong. So again, we may know more about what causes aberrant sexual appetites, but only the Bible will tell us whether it's morally right or morally wrong. And then he bigged up St. John Paul too, and the theology of the body.
Yeah.
But it was just really, he could not, he didn't slag anybody off. He wasn't rude to anybody. He simply, go on, who?
Yeah.
All right, Mark, tell who did he slag off?
Well, he didn't pick any names out, but like, you know, it's interesting. Like, it's great to hear different people's sort of readings of it. But so the first bit at the beginning there that Katherine was talking about, where he goes on about the excluded people, he immediately goes on and basically says, none of them have been excluded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, not in my experience. He says, like, you know, I've been doing this for years and years and years. And that is the theme to me of his letter here. He's saying, so come on, where's this new stuff? Oh, the new stuff is this, and he calls it absurd approach to sexual morality. He calls it absurd. I mean, I think it's really, really strong.
Really strong.
That bit at the beginning. So, you know, that where he says the church is meant to announce the gospel to everyone. And he quotes that. This is, you know, it's one of those phrases that I think will define this papacy. Todos, todos, todos. That Pope Francis, in Portuguese. And what he's saying is, you know, everything, everyone. And it's brilliant because what it does is it juxtaposes the synod approach, the synodal approach that Pope Francis is championing, and it puts it in the context of the church, because it says, yes, everyone is welcome. Everyone should be included in the mission of the church. And that mission is to say, repent and believe the gospel. That mission is to conform yourself to Christ. So the way that he does it is extremely, you know, clever, I think, and really, really well done.
And all in a page of A4, which again is brilliant.
Well, this is what was so, when I read it, it was really like coming up for air. And you just think, because he mentions ambiguity as well in the letter. And you just think, look, it really didn't take that much, did it? It's really clear. It's at the end, he says, near the end, I think when he's talking about the German bishops, he said, this, it seems to me, must be resisted. And I thought, when do you hear a bishop speaking so clearly?
Well, increasingly
Tyler
these days.
Well, increasingly actually, yeah.
Our Tyler is what we'll come to at some point, but we haven't got there yet. But I just to go back to the Voris thing, the truth took the strain in this letter. He just told the truth, and it was so powerful. And by leaving his own feelings, whether they were frustration, wonder, I mean, he's played a blinder, I think, because he was the hope for many people, and he said nothing at all ongoing, nothing at all was there. And then very quietly and very politely, and on a page of A4, dealing with all the major philosophical issues, 4 of them, he in 4 condensed paragraphs, he absolutely nails it. And I suddenly found myself wondering, hey, Bishop Barron for Pope. Wouldn't it be fantastic if the Cardinal suddenly said, oh, come on, enough of this ambiguity, enough of this schism, enough of falling on our, let's have an intellectual who can tell the truth again, like John Paul II. And I thought, well, and then I thought, what if Bishop Barron was lately Pope? I would feel so stupid for all the months and the years I'd complained and lamented and despaired. What a waste of time that would have been. And I think much of our anxiety, it's tautological, much of our anxiety is driven by fear. What I mean to say is, I think a lot of the fear we experience today is essentially lack of trust. And I've made a sort of new resolution. Well, I'm going to trust the Lord to make either Bishop Barron Pope or somebody else Pope like that. Because at the moment,
he's the third one, Gavin, isn't he, that's come out of the Synod now. So you've got Gadecki, the Polish Archbishop, the head of the Bishops' Conference in Poland, who gave that brilliant interview to Catholic World Report, which was that's the harshest criticism so far. But also Archbishop John Wilson of Southwark, who was very, very clear. And I was told caused a lot of trouble in the UK Bishops' Conference.
Oh, really? Well, but that's very interesting. Because we had somebody who. So first of all, I made a mistake by speed reading it, and I'm sorry about that. I don't make the same mistake twice. I went. Mark said.
Mark said, "Don't say this, Gavin."
Mark said, "Go and have another look, mate. You got it wrong." So I went back. Took more time, and I thought, oh gosh, this is brilliant. The reason I got taken in was because he starts off by by giving the establishment what it wants. And then he says, but actually, this is all nonsense. And it was the but actually I missed. That's struggle speed reading. Anyway, so I agree with you. And we now know who wrote it with him for him. It's a very good theologian. So yes, John Wilson did fantastically well and hugely marvelous. So what
he was
what
good.
do we know
John,
about
John Wilson
the trouble he got into?
Tell us about the trouble in a second. John Wilson did do well, but I thought Bishop Barron, in a way, that partly the length of the letter, as you say, a very short, succinct letter that didn't, I feel, go in for that let's wrap it all in synod speak and Francisese just to make people feel comfortable, and then hit them with a few. I thought Bishop Barron, did you get the impression? I thought two things, like you, Gavin. I came away thinking, Pope Robert Barron. That's got a nice ring to it. Although we're still hoping for Cardinal
real home runs.
But this, didn't you think he was like this? Oh, you just had this thought that he just like, right, okay.
Well, he does it beautifully, as you say, and it's very much his own style. Like, that's what I like about all three of those approaches. They've all very much their own perspective. They're not copying from each other. But there's some brilliant things in there. One of the things that I really liked was the mention of Catholic action. Did you notice that?
Yeah, so that was brilliant. Sorry, go on. Go on.
Well, so Catholic action, if no one knows, is like this lay apostolate that was working alongside the hierarchy. You know, I'm going back. This is like the beginning of the 20th century. The founder of it in Germany was assassinated by Hitler called for his assassination on the night of the Long Knives. So you know, this is like something that's really well known in Catholic circles. This was how they were talking about spreading the gospel and lay people being involved in it. So, you know, again, he's saying, so what's new about all this stuff? And what's new about it? And Gavin totally nailed it there, perhaps without understanding that it comes from, that Francis' approach comes from this South American document, the Aparecida document that, you know, like Austin Ivory and all this like are always on about. And that is exactly what you said, Gavin. It's like chuck all the good stuff. Like, so what they were saying was that they can't transmit the gospel through the culture anymore. Like, hasn't that been the case, you know, since pre-Vatican II anyway? So that we had to find a new way of doing it, and the new way was to sort of change our approach pastorally, and that is what Pope Francis keeps going on about. And but the other thing is that, so he also connects it to mission and Pope Paul VI. So you know, like, we've got this constant talk about Vatican II, haven't we? Well, of course, the Pope who finished Vatican II was Pope Paul VI. And if any, you know, if you're doing that, by doing that, Barron is anointing what he's saying, you know, in the sort of holy water of Vatican II, if you like. But there was basically there was an apostolic exhortation called Evangelii Gaudium. No, that's not it. It's Evangelii Nuntiandi. So I get me Evangelis all mixed up these days. By Paul VI, which talks about the mission, that the church is missionary, and that's what Barron copies that into his letter there. So there's some really brilliant little, if you know the documents, you know, you can see what he's referencing, and it's like, the way I read it was, oh, there's nothing new. The only new thing is that you're saying we're going to change the church's teaching to, and you don't even understand it. Like, he literally says, you don't understand the philosophy, you don't understand the theology. This is absurd. Those are his words. That is pretty brilliant, if you ask me.
Yeah, it was really clear. That stuff on mission was just brilliant, I thought. And especially dealing with this idea that, well, somehow in 2023, we know so much more science and we've got all this psychological, and he just totally dealt with that swiftly, cut through all of it and said, well, actually, this is a different category altogether. So there's no place to use that argument. But again, just so clearly and succinctly, that's what's so beautiful about it. He could have written 10 or 12 or 15 pages or a whole book, which all would have been beautiful, but it's just so accessible.
This goes back to first principles, which we all know, but so few people articulate. Why do we need the Bible instead of science? Because science doesn't tell you why; it only tells you how. Science doesn't give you morality. Only the Bible gives you morality. And so, but you know, we know this. It's 101, as the Americans say. But what's astonishing is how few people are actually saying it. And a while ago, in a fit of pretentiousness, I developed Ashenden first law of metaphysics. And the first law of metaphysics is simply this: for anyone who stopped praying and no longer believes in the miracle of conversion and transformation, the place they go is politics. And the more they do politics, the more they do mission as rescuing the poor, the more you know they're not saying their prayers and they've given up on the supernatural, which is why Barron prefaced the whole thing by saying the supernatural has to trump the natural. If you like, that's the leitmotif of the whole paper. And philosophically, ideologically, that's the platform. That's his first idea. Everything else flows from that.
And this is all Pope Benedict XVI's Jesus of Nazareth as well. He goes straight in with all that, with how we've turned to social justice warriors and made everything into political ideologies and stuff because of that, that very reason, that we have flipped everything and we've lost that sense of the supernatural and lost the sacred. So it's all in. I mean, Jesus of Nazareth is a must read. Mark.
It was interesting. I don't know if I mentioned this, but at the men's weekend, I don't know if we talked about this in the last Catholic Unscripted, but at Catholic Man UK, there was a question from the floor. So we had a couple of panel discussions, and it was like this group of young men who were basically saying, we know the faith is true. We know how powerful and what a treasure it is. But given the current hierarchy, how do we evangelize? And the panel unanimously came back with that treasure is still there, And one of the things that they said is, where's our Charles Borromeo? Where's our St. John Fisher? And everyone said, do you know Bishop Barron?
Yeah.
That is a heavy old cross to carry for Bishop Barron. But you have to say, look at him standing up and doing this, thanks be to God.
And Bishop Tyler. I mean, both of them.
Strickland, yeah.
You're not Tyler anymore.
Strickland of Tyler.
Yeah.
Yes, well, there we are.
Yeah, Bishop. I mean, we'll talk about Bishop Strickland a bit more, but that idea of Catholic action is brilliant, and that goes to your stuff about the men's group. That Catholic man is Catholic action. These are so important, and young men need that sort of lay apostolate, young women, older women. That's all these things. These preconciliars, as you said, have always taken place. The laity have always done these things. So Bishop Barron's quite right to point to those and say, well, isn't this what's lacking, rather than just good.
One of the young doctors, there was a young doctor, like really impressive young man on that trip, who asked me to publicise the fact that there's a rave plan for Canterbury Cathedral. I don't know if you saw it. So I put the link. Fair play to him. That this is Catholic action.
Yeah.
So have a look on the blog, and you'll see the latest thing is a link to a petition that you can sign to tell Archbishop Welby and the Church of England that they can't desecrate our holy places. Basically, I'm sure Gavin's got something to say about that as well.
Yeah.
If I draw off Catherine's colourful language earlier on the day and then double it. Except that the problem is that I think they're beyond hope. I mean, I don't want to go and talk back about what the Anglicans are doing in their latest synod and the level the level of corruption, intellectual and moral, that Welby has fallen into. I'm afraid no one is ever beyond hope, but given that they don't invoke the Lord, or if the Lord they invoke is not the one we know and love, they appear to me to be beyond hope. And again, it's another reason for saying that I think the great thing about the Catholic Church that I knew before I became a Catholic, but now I know even more, is its capacity for renewal. So Protestant was a kind of one-trick pony. Let's try and renew the church and then turn it into an end of its own, instead of a means to an end. But the end is the kingdom of heaven. If you like, the end is the Catholic Church. But renewal keeps on coming, and it'll come now too. We're not out of renewal yet. The others, poor dears, they're out of renewal. But become a Catholic and wait for Pope Robert, or one of the other one. God will rescue us, and then the rest will be great indeed.
I think it was Dwight Longenecker this week who was talking about this idea that people criticize Catholics and say you venerate crosses and statues of Mary, and So he said I think he was giving a talk once, and he put a crucifix on the ground and said, "You're all welcome to come and stamp on it and spit on it if you want." And nobody did. And there was just this sense that you just don't do that. And it's not because you worship the statue. It's not because you worship a bit of wood. So this petition, Mark, that you've put on your Twitter and is on your blog, I'll link here also. Yeah, it's saying, look, this is a holy place. This is built. It's a cathedral. It's
a Catholic cathedral.
It points, well, it is, yeah, and it points heavenward. And you're proposing to have a rave for over 18s and getting drunk, and it's not acceptable. This is not how you behave in this place.
It's not going to bring kids into the church. Well, I mean, it
Well,
will physically bring them in for a little while, but
yeah, I mean, it's all transient. You know, it's let's play football and listen to them talk about their feelings, but it's not. It doesn't offer anything. But
you use it for the purpose it was built with, or give it back.
Yeah, give it back, Protestants.
Yeah.
If you're watching.
Justin, you know it makes it. You know you fouled up. You know it makes sense.
We know you're watching, Justin.
Give it back.
Oh dear.
Right,
Bishop
come on,
Strickland.
Barron, I've got to have my dinner then.
All right, come on, Bishop Strickland. All right, well, there's not a lot to say about him. Just dear Bishop Strickland is still Bishop Strickland, who has been ousted, and Remnant. Michael Matt has spoken about this on the Remnant, worth going to watch, but of course for no reason, and he's showing us a great model of how to respond when you are persecuted and facing persecution. He is out, and he's praying, and he is doing good work, and God bless him, and let's continue to pray for him. So Gavin, tell us about
Well, he took it. Thank you. He took it to one more level, a level I hadn't seen before. So, I mean, I'd seen what Catherine's just described, as I think many people have. But what Matt was saying was that Tyler, I mean, first of all, he's got a transparently Christian face, which helps a great deal. You can see he says his prayers and he loves Jesus. There is no guile in the man anywhere.
Yeah.
And then he says, they've removed him. And then the question is always, for what? And the answer is, it's only for telling the truth about Jesus, because there is nothing else. Oh, a few administrative hiccups. What would they be, please? We don't know. They aren't there. And so, in a sense, what Michael was saying was that the bishop was a sign of rebuke to the Vatican. He will be a constant sign of rebuke to them for their hypocrisy, for their attempted coup within the church, and for as long as he's alive and saying his prayers and no longer in his diocese, he will be a rebuke, because they can't hang anything on him. It's perfectly clear they've executed him for standing up for the gospel in the things that he said. And they take it back to McCarrick. They say that it was in the House of American Bishops when he stood up and said, it is inexcusable that we let this happen, because there were people who knew very well what was going on. And so Michael at that point says that was the moment when they were determined to get him, because he told the truth about McCarrick. And I think I want to go back and say that one of the things, without trying to develop Michael's venom, but perhaps some of his passion, it is completely and wholly inexcusable that the child molesters and those who protected them should in any way be hidden and unaccountable in the church. And the Vatican is doing that even now.
Yeah. There's also silly reasons given. He wasn't liked in his diocese and things like this. But
it's not even true. But it's
not even true. Exactly, it's not even true anyway. And in fact, if you heard him speak quite beautifully about him not imposing Traditionis Custodes. Say it, Mark.
Traditionis Custodes, yeah. Traditionis
Custodes. And he said, I'm not going to take that away from the faithful who are, and he's not, this is the other thing. Don't you find there's a lot of this, you're rad trad? Somebody suggested that I might be rad trad the other day, which was quite interesting. And
never been to a Latin mass in your life?
No, I do go to Latin mass occasionally, but not as standard. I go to our local parish church where I help at the confirmation class and the communion class, and it's our community, and it's a beautiful little parish in South London, and it's Novus Ordo. And it's just these accusations to try and shut you down. And the same with Bishop Strickland. He doesn't do Latin Mass, but he's not a rad trad, but he just wasn't prepared to shut others down who do, and where there are these faithful who are going to be go where, shut them down and send them off, so I thought that was really beautiful.
And he's loved by everything I ever hit, and our experience when we've been in America is that if you ask the faithful, the first person they mention is Bishop Strickland. So I can't help but think this is a massive own goal, especially when you've got the situation. I mean, think about the seminarians. They've got they've got this huge ratio per capita of seminarians, 22 young men in formation or something, for a very small number of Catholics in the diocese. What must they think now? You've got a situation where you've got this week, Bishop Bonney has come out and said that euthanasia, killing innocent people, is okay. He's not been removed. You've got the Bishop of Speyer, Wiseman, he's come out with and told his priests they can bless same-sex unions. He's not been removed.
Yeah.
Who's been removed? Strickland. It's just that, unfortunately, what's going on is that the Pope is destroying his own credibility. And the most thing that I worry about is that it's the credibility of the office will be damaged as a result of this papacy. And it's really unfortunate that we have got one retired bishop, as far as I know, in America. Well, okay, Archbishop Cordileone as well has stood up for him. But Archbishop Garcia has stood up for him. But you've got no one else. There are foreign bishops who are standing up for him, but very few of his brother bishops have stood up. And I don't think that they're aware of the amount of feeling from faithful Catholics behind this, when, as you've rightly said, we've got bishops in place who are speaking against the truth of the Catholic faith. We've got the Pope himself is condoning and covering up for people who are abusing children. This isn't hyperbole. This is something that is demonstrably true, unfortunately. Where do you go with that? The people who are making excuses for the Pope, I think, I don't understand how you can do it in this environment.
Very good. Right. Well, thank you for watching. Please do visit us at catholicunscripted.com, scroll down and join the mailing list. Once again, thank you to everybody who has donated and support us. Yes, Gavin.
Well, I just wanted to say that if you think my picture is clear, there may not all be benefits, but the fact that my picture is clear is because I've been able to pay for some proper internet and a proper computer. So and it's not just that it looks pretty, but no longer does my sort of face stop halfway through a sentence and you lose the rest. So can we just say, I know that we're all extremely grateful for the practical support, and we hope that and pray that what we do with it spiritually will honor the generosity that people have been so kind with.
Yeah. So we hope we hope you see the changes that your generous support has helped to bring about, but also we will let you know. And do consider joining as a member, not just to support our cause, but also because we are looking at what we can offer to our members, including some extra content. So take a look on the website at the different memberships, and we're very, very grateful for all your support. Most of all, please, to all of you watching, do continue to keep us in your prayers, as we do all of you. And as we began the programme talking about Michael Voris, we know how vulnerable we are. So let's never forget that. But thank you for watching. I'm Katherine Bennett.
Thank you, everyone. We were overwhelmed by your support. And so thanks very much. And I'm Mark Lambert.
Thank you. I'm Gavin Ashton. God bless you.